Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Democracy 3? Well, it's the third in a political simulation series by the name of Democracy, as you might imagine. No big surprise there. Comes from a company called Positech, which is basically Cliff Harris and some guys he outsources graphics and music to from time to time. He's kind of a one-man band, and he's made a few games. The Kudos series, as well as gratuitous space and tank battles, and the innumerable DLC available for those. And then, of course, the Democracy series, which I think is one of his most successful. In fact, some of the earlier games were even used for educational purposes. He promises this to be the most complex political simulation yet. We'll see whether or not that is true. So, head on over to the options menu to start with. This is a guy that really likes his sliders, so he's certainly providing a few of them here. This game almost has no graphics to speak of. It is very, very basic in terms of how it displays its information, but it's also very clear and concise with how it does so. So, don't expect anything fancy in that respect. You'll understand in a moment. You got some options here that you can mess around with, and separate audio sliders, as well as resolution, full screen, and not. So that's always nice to have. And that's pretty much about it. Now, the game does have mod support, which is quite nice to have. I believe they've already released a mod for Austria, or something along those lines that you can get. So you can download a lot of those via the website and set them up. You've also got a manual there, Facebook option for whatever godforsaken reason. So I'm going to load into a game, but firstly I'd like to show you the options for picking which country you want, and what kind of political leanings you can go for, because that's kind of interesting. So in the default game, there are 6 different nations you can play: UK, France, Germany, as well as the US, Canada, and Australia. Each of these play quite differently, as you might imagine, and they can actually define the difficulty of the game as well. If you play America on default, you only have 2 terms, as you might imagine, because that's the way that the presidency works over there. So you will be able to play for that long only, and then it kind of comes to an end. In the UK, you can go on for as long as you want, because again, that's how things work over there. And each of these countries has different default leanings. So if you go into the US, you're going to be in a country that already has the ability to buy handguns and already has the death penalty and things like that. So if you want to go about repealing stuff like that, it's going to be a little bit difficult. And that's where a lot of the gameplay actually comes from, and the challenges as well. Because if you want to change a country to something that it clearly isn't, it's going to take you a while, and it's going to be very difficult to do. However, countries that have particular leanings already will be easier to push in that direction. To demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my UK. But before I do that, I will show you this here. So you can customize your term length and your term limit. These are the defaults. They're based around what this particular country has. Obviously, we don't really have hurricanes and earthquakes in the UK, or compulsory voting, but we do have the monarchy, so that's something to bear in mind. And customize difficulty, innate socialism, innate liberalism, and political apathy. So this will kind of push your country one direction or the other, and these are kind of the defaults set for this country. So it makes sense. And that's actually kind of a strength of the game, because each of the countries acts in a way that you would kind of expect them to. And as a result, changing policy and trying to push the country in a different direction is where a lot of the challenge lies. So I'm going to load into one of my games here. So we'll see what's going on over here. And this, as you can probably see, I think this is my American one. Either that, or it's my UK's attempt to become a ridiculous police state theocracy. Yeah, I was kind of messing around here with this. I'll show you this first, and then I'll try and show you my successful UK, which went in the other direction. So every 3 months or so, every quarter, you're given a report to start your turn. And usually you're given something that you need to make a choice on. It'll be an either or. So in this case, it's a current affairs issue, curb banking bonuses. Do I want to do that? And it will have an effect, one way or the other. And it may make you more popular, may make you less popular, may actually have some kind of economic outcome. And usually they don't actually give you that much information when it comes to that choice. So you kind of got to go with your gut when it comes to that. So I think we'll do nothing for the time being. I think we'll just let that go. And it gives you an election report, and we're not in a good place. Let's just put it that way. The global economy, as you can see, is in recession. Less than half the country wants to vote for me, and Nicole Allen really wishes to go away. Now, you might ask why. Well, there's a couple of reasons. So welcome to democracy, a gigantic pile of bubbles. So the way that the interface works in this game is actually quite interesting because it shows you what policies have impacts on what issues. And it does that by having these different bubbles here. Now, red bubbles mean it's a problem. It's a crisis that needs to be solved in some way. And when I hold my mouse button over it, what it's going to do is it's going to show me which issues are contributing to it and which issues are against it. So, as you can see here, intelligence services and police drones are having a... It's kind of weird to say because they're actually having a positive impact on organized crime, but since the way that the game displays things means that red takes away from and green contributes to, that means that police drones are actually kind of damaging the event, I suppose. You know, if you were to take an event as a health bar, yeah? This is kind of a health bar here, as you can see. So, if this goes down any further, that will actually stop it completely. So you'll notice here that both my intelligence services and my police drones are taking away from this, yeah? So what is contributing to it? Well, we can see that as well. It's mostly narcotics, so if I were to do something about drugs, I may be able to knock this down entirely, or I can put more budget into the intelligence services, maybe I can enact some kind of legislation to slow it down, and the results of organized crime are that it increases both crime and violent crime. What does crime do? Well, as you can see, it has effects on all sorts of things. It has effects on tourism. It affects the gross domestic product. And you can also see what's contributing to it. Education is actually taking away from the desire to commit crimes. Community policing is doing something about it, but alcohol abuse, another problem, is also contributing to it. So it's actually really smart. It's kind of like a web system whereby you can tell exactly what is connected to everything else. Now, each of these turns, you are able to spend so-called political capital, which is generated by your cabinet ministers, and they will be loyal depending on what you do. We heard about her earlier. She's not very loyal at all. She's only given me 1 political capital every turn because, well, she sympathizes with liberals and commuters. Guess who I pissed off? Indeed. So, because I wanted to create my crazy theocracy, I decided to only teach creationism, which really annoyed a lot of liberals, as you can see here. And it also contributed to being a technological backwater. It meant that we've got a lot more religious members. It is possible to actually push what is otherwise a fairly secular nation in the other direction. But you definitely don't do it in the way that I'm currently doing it, which is going to result in me not being re-elected. I'm currently sitting on a pretty bad budget deficit. My debt is £607 million. I am very popular with the religious, but you've also got to bear in mind exactly how many religious people are in this country to begin with. These bars in the center of the screen all represent voter groups, so I'm very popular with conservatives right now. Why? Because I outlawed abortion. As you can see here, they were a big fan of that. I currently have banned all drugs. I have great police force for the most part. My prison system is working pretty well. They're not particular fans of the Race Discrimination Act. It's funny, really, because I've got to be honest, this game does make it out like conservatives are kind of bad people. I think the political leanings of the developer are kind of on display here, which is not really surprising. Like, even in the UK, conservatives are not actually that conservative, not compared to people in the US, for instance. So, it's not entirely surprising that this is the way that it is. Oh yeah, I also legalized all guns, which the parents absolutely loved, by the way. Yeah, they're not too happy with that. But they're more, funnily enough, they're more concerned about the asthma epidemic than the fact that most of my country are running around with submachine guns under their coats. So, I guess somebody please think of the children is very much a viable thing here. But yeah, the political leanings of the developer are kind of on display, which is fine. I'm okay with that. You know, at the end of the day, he has the bloody right, doesn't he? And what I do find interesting is the fact that when you play the UK, you very much get these ideas. When you play the US, things do seem to change around somewhat. The UK is more of a liberal kind of place for the most part politically. And it's also reasonably socialist. I mean, we are talking about a country that has a state health service. We're talking about a country that does have extensive aid for, say, the unemployed, retired, child aid, and things like that. It has a lot of that kind of stuff. So these kind of socialist tendencies are reasonable for the UK. They are kind of expected for the most part. But we're not doing so well in here, so I'm going to load up my other one. And I'm going to show you, at least I hope this is it, and I didn't accidentally delete it. There we go. This is a little bit better. Okay, it's a little bit problematic because one of our islands just got invaded, which kind of sucks. I did cut military budget, but I've got 81% of the vote right now, which is not too shabby. Not too bad at all. The health of my guys is amazing. Just look at that. I barely got any crime. Poverty's at an all-time low. Still need to work on education, but I also have a slight budget deficit right now, so I kind of need to deal with that. So the Patriots really don't like me after that. This is a weird one because there's a bar here called everyone, which actually doesn't mean everyone. It just means something that everyone is affected by. Nobody likes crime. Yeah, nobody here likes crime. And apparently nobody likes tobacco tax either, so... Well, I don't care. I'm taxing that thing 44%. I'm making $1 billion a quarter off that. It's helping health. I mean, you can see that it's got impacts on tobacco use. It's vastly reduced tobacco use, which has resulted in at least slower damage to health, I gotta say. You can notice here the health values over time, and there was an obesity epidemic, I think, that I'm pretty sure I've dealt with that. No, that's still a problem. I've almost got it, but... Turns out agriculture subsidies are making everybody fat. Who knew? Now, aside from all of this, what you're going to be doing for the most part, and you're just like, where's the gameplay? Where's the gameplay? Well, the gameplay is a bunch of sliders. I gotta say, Cliff really likes his sliders. In almost every game I've played of his, there's a bunch of sliders. And you can manipulate various different sliders to affect policy. And... to raise or lower it takes political capital. To cancel it entirely also takes political capital. So, depending on how loyal your cabinet is, depends on how much you can really do in a turn. And there are some really difficult things, like, if I wanted to enact, we'll just cancel this, if I wanted to go to policies, which would be up here, and I believe I can enact the death penalty, that would take a lot of political capital. I need 50 capital to do that. That's going to be very, very difficult to do. I really need to please the ministers, and each of them have different tendencies. So, honestly... the guys who are not really big fans of my stuff, I'm going to have problems with. This guy very much sympathizes with commuters and motorists. I have really hit car use hard, which has resulted in fantastic economy. And not only that, but it's also resulted in fantastic environmental improvements. But motorists are pretty unhappy, so there are definitely issues there, one way or the other. But things are going reasonably well here. You'll also notice here there's an intelligence briefing. It is possible to die in this game. You can be assassinated if you do too many bad things and your security isn't really up to snuff. So that's certainly something to bear in mind. Aside from that, the game really just provides you with an awful lot of information. Huge amounts of it. This is a focus group, for instance. I can pick someone randomly here. So, alright. He's a fanatically supportive member of our Liberal Party. And he's not part of any organizations. This is his kind of income here. He's gonna vote for us. Why does he like us? Well, he likes us because of these reasons, you know. We are very socialist-leaning. We like the poor. We're reasonable towards parents. Apparently, he's not a big fan of us kind of pushing towards the farmers. We actually do help the farmers out quite a bit with the subsidies and things like that. And then you can kind of go through this focus group and figure out, this person doesn't like us at all. Why is that? Because he's very heavily capitalist, which I'm certainly not. And also, he's very much a patriot. And I believe, by the way, there are no such thing as patriots in the UK, unless you call them football hooligans. But regardless, he earns a lot of money. He's not particularly happy with how things are going. And as a result, he's not going to vote for me. But... you know, you can figure things out, and I could just reset and just do a new focus group and try and figure out, you know, who likes me, who dislikes me. There is a massive amount, a huge amount of information available. All these policies here, for instance. So much information. And it's almost like this game would drown you in it if it didn't do such a phenomenal job of conveying information to you via this web here. This is just genius. It really is. It does an excellent job of cutting through what looks initially like a completely unfathomable interface. It looks ridiculous, but in reality, it works very, very well indeed. Alright, we need to deal with this deficit. How are we going to do it? Well, I'm going to push forward another turn and see if my deficit is growing at all. Okay, so it is. Right, I need to figure out exactly why that is. Well, it's probably because the global economy is in a deep recession, which is hitting us pretty hard. So we do need to do something about that. Our ministers are doing pretty well. Do we want to allow software patents? Well, no, we don't. Software patents are terrible. So That's my political leanings coming out, by the way. All right, we've got to figure out where this budget deficit is coming from. Well, you can see our income fell significantly. Our expenditures kind of leveled off here. In fact, our expenditure's been reasonable for a while, but we took kind of a big dip here, so we're just recovering from it. So I need to watch out for that. Might want to... We could probably increase something. My sales tax is actually reasonably high. I don't want to really push that any higher. I could probably just tax alcohol more. I'm already trying to deal with an alcohol abuse issue. Mostly because I kind of legalized alcohol for everybody, which may have been a bad idea. It actually wasn't a bad idea. The amount of money I make from alcohol tax is hilarious. The amount of income is just ridiculous. God, I'm making so much money from it. But I think I should probably tax it a little bit more. Look at this. 22 billion pounds a quarter from alcohol tax. Everyone in my country's drunk. It's incredible. I'm making so much money from this that it's actually helping me to pay for the health system and things like that. We can push that up a little bit more. There we go. People are not going to like it, but we can maybe give them something else to keep them happy. What else can we do? We need to cut the agriculture subsidies, honestly. They're really contributing to obesity. The farmers don't really like us much anyway, and the capitalists absolutely hate us. So I think we can maybe cut the subsidies a little bit more. There we go. Strangely enough, there's even actually a cost if you don't have any subsidies whatsoever. I could just cancel a policy, I guess. Yeah, let's just get rid of all alcohol, all of these subsidies. There we go. Alcohol subsidies. Man, I've even got alcohol in the brain. I guess I'm a citizen of this glorious nation. Alright, so that's that. Let's see what happens next turn. Okay. Alright, there's a surplus. Excellent. So this seems to work pretty well. Our poll ratings are pretty good as well. Our GDP is doing about as well as can be expected. And currently we have hunger strikes going on. I'm okay with allowing visits. That's fine. There we go. And that's how the game continues, essentially, until you either get killed or kicked out of office. Now, I think that a lot of critiques of games or reviews like to use the term, it's not for everyone. I think that's a bit of a cop-out, honestly. I think games can be for a wider audience if they present the subject matter in a compelling way. The weird thing about Democracy 3 is that I don't think it does present the subject matter in a compelling way, and yet it manages to be interesting regardless. And I think there's this inherent desire within a lot of us just to kind of tweak things and see what would happen, see how it pans out. And that's something that Democracy 3 does really well. It scratches that itch incredibly well, and it does such a great job of giving you feedback on all of your decisions, and I absolutely love that. I really, really do. Well, there's a bit of a media backlash. The capitalists hate us again. It actually makes no difference whatsoever. It really, really doesn't. And we're looking good elsewhere. Organized crime is still a problem. That's quite surprising. We still haven't dealt with the obesity epidemic. I've cut down on that. It's actually because we're all rich. That's the hilarious thing. We are currently all rich. I'm trying to think of any other ways to cut down on them. I guess we could start taxing junk food. That might work pretty well. So let's go for that. Are we already taxing it? No, we're not. There we go. Most people are not going to like this, but it's a good way of earning a little bit extra cash. Oh, no, it actually isn't. The cost is monumental. Jeez! Why does taxing junk food cost that much? That's actually a little crazy. But I think we can push it even higher because, frankly, I want this obesity thing to just disappear. There we go. So, we can deal with that. You got to watch out, by the way, for the actual costs of things because some of them sound absolutely ridiculous. Like, wow, how could you tax things this much? That's absolutely insane. But in reality, it's costing us millions, not billions. Millions is actually a drop in the ocean for this kind of budget. So this should hopefully push the obesity problem down a little bit. It's compelling. And I think the subject matter helps it a lot. I think if it was anything else other than running a country, then looking at something like this, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be interested. But because it's all about running a country, and also because they have a nice little selection of countries available, I think a lot of people will be interested in messing around. I'm just going to jump out of this and actually load up an America one. I could show you how different this actually is. So this is the standard, this is what it thinks, and we'll go straight into this. And this is what America looks like. It's a little bit different. Yeah? Antisocial behavior is a big problem here. The death penalty is, of course, a thing. There you go. That's already implemented. Getting rid of the death penalty is incredibly difficult. If I got enough, I could actually impose the death penalty for most crimes, which would be pretty hilarious. And I think that's where a lot of the challenge comes from, is implementing some crazy policies and trying to get people to accept them. And that's such a compelling idea. I think all of us kind of power trip on that notion, and Democracy 3 does a great job of scratching that particular itch. You've got to be careful with it. You've got to be very, very careful with it. And there are definitely paths of least resistance, yeah? As you noticed, I turned my Britain into a socialist liberal utopia where everyone can drink, everyone can own a submachine gun, and things like that. Actually, it wasn't the gun. That was the other one, wasn't it? Yeah. So, it helps to go down the path that the country's already kind of going down in the first place, right? But the challenge is trying to go a different way. And I think that's really interesting. And maybe the game is a little bit too easy when you take that path of least resistance, but there is a difficulty slider at the start, and I think it's definitely worth looking into. So, it's a game that you would think initially is a niche, but I have a feeling an awful lot more people will enjoy it than actually think that they will. Because it doesn't take too long to actually get into the nitty-gritty of controlling different aspects. It's a micromanager's dream, and it does so in a really nice, fluid way that has a fantastic interface and excellent feedback. It is one of the best games I've ever played for giving the player excellent information and access to everything he could possibly need to know. And that, to me, is a challenge, to say the least. If I were to have any real criticisms about it, aside from it, hey, it's a political simulator, is that maybe it just lacks a little bit of character. There's a little bit of Cliff Harris's standard humor in here, but it's perhaps not quite as sharp as in some of the other games. Not really a big criticism to make, because at the end of the day, it is a political simulator. The only massive complaint I think I have about it is the fact that political capital is the way to get things done. And it's a very gamey, nebulous kind of idea that seems to bypass the notion of the amount of resistance that a lot of this stuff can actually get from the opposing party. Like, if I were to simulate the US right now and I tried to change anything, it would probably get filibustered or just cock-blocked in some way. And that's not really simulated in any real respect, aside from with political capital. I can make sweeping changes, and the opposing party will not stop me. And that, I think, is something that I feel could be simulated an awful lot better. That's maybe the biggest thing, and I think that's something that needs to be worked on for Democracy 4. Aside from that, though, it's a satisfying political simulation that is reasonably easy to get into, but very hard to master, and I have a feeling that, I suppose, telling your own story is a big deal here. The theme cannot be underestimated in how compelling it can be. You're changing a country, you're shaping the lives of a nation. That's something that perhaps all of us dream of doing. It's a massive power fantasy, certainly. And as a result, you can have discussions with your nerdy friends about how you legalize submachine guns in the UK and how you legalized all drugs and somehow managed to come out of there with a popular vote. That's a cool thing to talk about. I'll take that any day over collect 50 bear asses in under 4 minutes. You can pick this game up for $25 or your regional equivalent. It's available on Steam right now. Democracy 3, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.